The Nintendo Switch has been out for 3 months now, and it got off to a great start. Zelda Breath of the Wild was an awesome launch title and was well received by a lot of people. Games available at launch of a new gaming system sometimes provide a certain sign for the future. Hey guys, I'm Luke from Sloth, and in this video we take a look back at 10 times Nintendo launch titles were awesome. So let's get right into it. You know, Tetris is one of the most iconic video games of all time, and over the years a lot of different versions have been released. But for me the most memorable one is Tetris on the good old Game Boy. Released in 1989, for a long time it was my go-to puzzle game. It might not be as flashy as something like Tetris with Cardcaptor Sakura Eternal Heart for PlayStation, but I still spent hours and hours trying to reach the end of level 9 and send off that freaking rocket to space. Rarely games gave me that big of a feeling of accomplishment for finally beating him. Just listen to the music at the end of the game, it's mwah, 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 mwah. It was the perfect game to show off the Game Boy, since Tetris is extremely addictive and doesn't need fancy graphics or a big screen to appeal to a wider audience. As of now, the Game Boy version of Tetris has sold over 35 million copies, and is generally credited as a major factor in the popularity of the handheld. When Donkey Kong for the Famicom got released in 1983, it was one of 3 launch titles, but the game already was a huge hit due to its success as an arcade machine. Nonetheless, the Famicom and later released NES version were a bit different from its original. The Cement Factory level was not included since Nintendo did not have large enough cartridges. The NES port, however, included a new song composed by Yukio Kanioka for the title screen. Later on, the US got Donkey Kong Jr. Math as one of 18. I repeat, 18 launch titles for the NES. Whoa, fun with numbers, hey! Donkey Kong is a classic, and it wrote gaming history as being the first platform game to feature jumping, and with 4 unique stages being the most complex arcade game at its time. Even if the Famicom version was just a port, the game still deserves a spot on this list. With the release of Castlevania Circle of the Moon in 2001, the series added another game to its handheld era. Konami developed and designed the title as a launch title for the Game Boy Advance. The game would turn out to be very long and challenging, but at the same time gave you a feeling of success when you finally finished a level. Most of the difficulty was caused by the dark graphics that were too hard to see on the Game Boy Advance's screen, and the character animations feeling out of place at some points. But even with a few flaws and probably not being one of the top entries to the series, Circle of the Moon is still a great introduction to the franchise. Also, bringing a big name like Castlevania to a new console is always good. F-Zero was released alongside the SNES in Japan in 1990, in America in 1991 and in Europe in 1992. The game gave you a feeling of a 3D world, which at that time was something new. While it was just a form of texture mapping available only on the SNES, F-Zero perfectly showed off the system's capabilities. Today, F-Zero is still considered one of the best racing game series of all time. In 2015, Miyamoto confirmed that the F-Zero franchise was not dead, by stating that a new installment in the franchise could be possible if the company were to develop a unique controller interface that would be suited for a new game. The concept of a 3D Mario game had been floating around at Nintendo for a while. There was supposed to be a 3D Mario game on the SNES codenamed Super Mario FX, but it got pushed back. With the new N64 controller having more buttons for gameplay, the concept was revisited and turned into Super Mario 64. Developing a 3D game turned out to be harder than expected, and the designers just spent months on figuring out a good camera angle. After finding an appropriate layout and camera view, the choice was made to make Mario 64 a free-roaming game and dumping the idea of it having a fixed path. But you can still find parts of the original fixed path concept within the 3 Bowser encounters. Not only was Super Mario 64 one of 2 titles available at launch of the Nintendo 64, it is also one of the best games playable on the system. I remember how hyped I was about the Nintendo Wii when it first released 10 years ago. At that time, motion control seemed to be the limit of making the player actually feel like part of the game. Little did I know where we would end up. Like the Nintendo Switch, the Wii also got a Zelda game at launch that it shared with its predecessor. The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess released for the GameCube and Nintendo's newest console at the same time in 2006. Being developed for two consoles, Nintendo had to move the previously announced 2005 release for the GameCube. They knew they would upset some fans, but Satoru Iwata felt like having both versions would satisfy users in the end, even though they would have to wait for the finished product a little bit longer. On final release in 2006, the hype was unbelievable. Twilight Princess was considered to be the greatest Zelda game ever made by many critics and got the absolute highest recommendations from all around the world. Did you know that this gem of a game was one of the GameCube's launch titles back in 2001? The game is Luigi's second solo adventure after Mario's missing for the SNES. The original idea was to have levels revolved around a mansion with different Mario characters. Also, the concept of the game being an RPG title was scrapped when the game went into development for the GameCube. The team then decided to set Luigi as the main character, so the game would feel like something fresh and new. Later the theme was changed a bit and Luigi was equipped with a flashlight and a vacuum cleaner to go on a big ghost hunt. Back then the game showed you the ingenuity of the GameCube's hardware and still holds up today with its fun gameplay compared to some other titles. The legacy of Super Mario Bros. For the NES is humongous. It saved the North American video game market with its release in 1985 and is one of the most influential games of all time. And it features Luigi for the first time. What else can I say? It's a classic. Everybody knows it, everybody played it, and everybody loves it. This one is kind of a stretch, but I mean The Legend of Zelda started one of the biggest video game franchises and was a launch title for the Famicom Disk System back in Japan in 1986. After the launch of the NES in North America and Europe, the game got re-released for the new system in 1987. It just wasn't one of the launch titles.
It's The Legend of Zelda and it's really rad. Those creatures from Ganon are pretty bad.
There were a few minor changes between the original and the re-released version. Most of them involved text being aligned to the new format. Also, the Bible from the story was renamed to Book of Magic since it could have possibly offended some people, and additional enemies were added in 2 dungeons. I mean, look how many people still get hyped about a new Zelda game, and it doesn't look like the adventures around our hero Link will stop anytime soon. If you ask people what their favorite Mario game is, there's a high chance of them saying Super Mario World. Not only is it a great game with awesome music and visuals, it is also the launch title for one of the single greatest video game consoles in the history of gaming. From 1990 till 1992, the Super Famicom and the SNES were released all over the world, packed with Super Mario World. Did you know that Yoshi also made his first ever appearance in this game? So the legacy of Super Mario World is not only being one of the best Mario games ever, it is also the birthplace of one of the most important characters in the Mario universe. Maybe your favorite Mario game is another title from the franchise, but in the end it just comes down to a few little personal preferences. When it comes to the Super Mario franchise, this one will always have the #1 spot in my heart. Well, that's this video. Let us know what is your all-time favorite launch title in the comments down below. And while this video might be over, make sure to subscribe to Rocket Sloth for more gaming lists, news and discussions uploaded daily. Your new #1 source for all things gaming.